Meanwhile, Chinese Premier Li Keqiang and German Chancellor Angela Merkel have vowed to extend their countries' relationship amid the uncertain global environment. In Berlin, the leaders oversaw the signing of dozens of deals in areas such as electric car projects, trade and people-to-people exchanges. They agreed to speed up negotiations on a China-EU investment deal. They also agreed to make diplomatic efforts to resolve the DPRK issue, but Merkel said Germany could get involved. Li called on Germany to help the China-developed large passenger plane C919 get an airworthiness certificate from the European Union. He welcomed Merkel's remarks on fulfilling WTO articles on China's market economy status. Following the news conference at the German Chancellery, the leaders attended a forum on innovation. Li promised policy support for German enterprises in China, including further opening up market access. Well, Chinese Premier Li Keqiang has just arrived in Brussels for the 19th China-EU leaders meeting. He is also on an official visit to Belgium. For more on this, we're joined from Brussels by Mariam Zaidi. Mariam, what's the main agenda of the Chinese Premier's visit to Belgium?
Hi. Well, of course, as you were saying, this is, of course, the 19th bilateral summit between the EU and China. It's going to be the third for the EU presidents Juncker and Tusk. Now, this evening in Brussels, both delegations are meeting for dinner, and Friday is really the business end of the summit, where the big decisions, the big meetings will take place. Now, the main focuses will be the investment agreement, trade, and, of course, climate change. But we'll come to that a bit later on. Now, on trade, the EU is looking, or expecting rather, for a time frame for reciprocal market access to be decided at this summit, along with market reform. Now, just to give you an idea of trade between the two, there is 40 billion euros of outward investment to the EU from China, but EU to China is only 8 billion. Now, the EU is also looking for a Chinese agreement on overcapacity, especially on steel. The Belt and Road Initiative will also come up in discussions, but the big one for the Chinese side, of course, will be the market economy status. Reform of trade defence instruments is being introduced by the EU Commission. So China, of course, will be looking for the next steps on this, and whether or not they can, of course, gain that important market economy status.
Let's talk about that crucial issue of climate change. What kind of reaction are we likely to get from the EU if Trump withdraws the US from the Paris climate change agreement?
Sure. Well, the reaction so far in Brussels, just like wherever else today, has been, of horror, really, especially because the EU-China summit, both sides are set to unveil a renewed impetus to really take the lead and the charge on climate change. Now, for over a year now, EU and Chinese officials have been carefully crafting together an agreement on not just climate change, but also on clean energy. But what the EU is saying is that a US pullout wasn't factored into the joint draft statement. But the EU maintains that the Paris Climate Change Agreement is legally binding and that a US pullout will have no effect whatsoever. And we can also see from Premier Li's joint statement with Angela Merkel earlier on today in Berlin that it will have no effect. But at least at last, we can also give some context to this. At last week's G7 summit in Taormina in Sicily, it became quite obvious there that the other 6 leaders were being frustrated by Donald Trump on climate action. We saw them show that they are ready to go ahead on climate change without the USA, and in fact it may actually be easier for all the countries to get on with the Paris Agreement if the US isn't frustrating the process anymore. Now, of course, the irony of Trump signing off his tweets on climate with the words "to make America great again" is that actually it could have the polar opposite effect and turn out to be one of the biggest policy blunders in recent American history. It shows the abdication of the US leading the world, and as the US is wavering, it's galvanizing world powers. Today, Donald Tusk, the EU Council President, on Twitter, he pleaded with Trump not to change the political climate for the worse, but of course we will have to wait for Donald Trump to make his statement in a few hours' time. Back to you.
All right, Mariam Zaidi, live for us in Brussels. Thank you.